Evan, your first sneaky buy. Do you want to talk us through?
Yeah, I mean, it's first one up here is just Christian Kirk. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, it's for me, the offseason is purely about value. It's just accruing value wherever you can find it. I'm honestly not the biggest Christian Kirk guy in the world. I'm really not. Like, I don't really have any shares of him. It was only because when you asked me to come on the show and you were mentioning this segment, I kind of was looking around, poking around, looking at ADPs and things like that. And it kind of just jumped out at me because I was like, okay, Christian Kirk just had a really, really good season. And it's not like he was a bum before that. He just had an even better season than he has been having. I mean, in certain leagues, depending on your scoring and stuff like that, he was basically a top 12 wide receiver this year, like borderline top 12 wide receiver. And yet he's going as wide receiver 34 in DLF. He's going for like a late first, early second round pick in some leagues. People, I feel like, are just painting this picture that Calvin Ridley is going to show up after not playing football for 2 years and basically put Christian Kirk out of business. And I just don't think that's really true. I don't think that even if Calvin Ridley comes back and is awesome, which I hope he does, but we've seen, Deshaun Watson take 2 years off of football and come back and not look very good. So we don't know until we see it. That's one thing. Second thing is, Christian Kirk was clearly the number one wide receiver. So even if Calvin Ridley comes in and out alphas him or whatever, he'll be the wide receiver 2. There's still going to be plenty of volume. There's still going to be plenty to go around. I think that for me, it's just a pure value play. If you can get a guy who just finishes a wide receiver 1, and again, you look at what he did in 2021 in Arizona, which was a worse offense in my opinion. He still had over 100 targets in that offense, 77 receptions, almost 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. So if that's kind of more your floor, he was still low end wide receiver 2. You're getting him for like wide receiver 3, 4 numbers. So for me, it's just a value play. I don't see the reason not to, if that's the price.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this offense is going to take a big step forward next year. I think that Trevor Lawrence, we saw down the stretch, those final kind of 10 games, I think he really took a step, and I think he's going to take another step into next year. I think the Calvin Ridley addition potentially helps Christian Kirk. I think it's another weapon on the field. Christian Kirk is he runs 70, 80% of his routes from the slot, but he can be that deep threat from the slot. And I think that him not having to run those intermediate routes that Calvin Ridley is elite at will open him up to get potentially some more of those higher value touches down the field, which is only going to be good things for his fantasy production. So yeah, I really like the buy. My sneaky buy, Rashod Bateman. I think, look, it's difficult when I'm sitting here saying buy a guy because he's really talented. He's shown glimpses in year 1. He's shown glimpses in year 2, but there's been injuries. His quarterback's been injured. But I really, really believe in the talent. I think he is such a talented wide receiver, and I think that his current ADP of wide receiver 36 is criminal. He was 13th in yards per route run last year. He was 20th in targets per route run. He's under contract for another couple of years. You don't have to worry about that. I think he fits this offense perfectly, and I think he's going to be 100 plus, 120 target guy next year. He's just got to stay healthy, and if they re-sign Lamar and they can potentially add another weapon in the receiving game, I really think he's going to massively outproduce his current value. Keep Trade Cut have currently got him worth the 202. I'm sending the 202 for Rashod Bateman every single day of the week. I think that is an absolute bargain. Do you agree, or do you think I'm crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I personally, my take on it is I really love the talent. What I would say is if you're doing a startup, I think he's probably a real value. I think that, everyone's going to be like, I don't know. And then you're going to get him at a really nice value. I think in existing leagues, he probably now belongs with the Rashod Bateman truther in your league. And so I don't think that person, like if it's you, if you Rich have him, even if you're rebuilding, are you going to accept, if I come to you and say, here's the 201, will you give me Rashod Bateman? Are you accepting that?
No.
Exactly. So you're going to want a first round pick for a guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy, doesn't play in a high volume offense, all that sort of stuff, which I understand. I get the argument, but it's a risk reward thing. You know what I mean? It's very much like, in my mind, not the same exact thing, but it's like a Kadarius Toney sort of situation. You're like, okay, this guy could be the wide receiver one for Patrick Mahomes and be like amazing. And you see these flashes and you're like, this guy's incredible, but he can't stay healthy. And we haven't seen him actually nail that down. And again, it's not a perfect example. I do think Rashod Bateman, as just a pure wide receiver, is more talented. And I love Rashod Bateman's talent. So it just depends on the situation. I think in startups, 100% agree with you. I think in an existing league, yes, knock on the door 100%. And if you can find the manager who's just sick, sore, and tired of Rashod Bateman and tired of getting burned by the injuries, and you can get him for the 202, yes, 100% I agree with you. I just have a feeling that, do you know what I mean? Not a lot of people like in that league. We're in a league together with a bunch of content creators. And I think your friend, your buddy Liam has Rashod Bateman in that league. And I've got like the 201 or 202 or something. And I'm pretty confident if I go offer him the 202 for, he's not going to take, the 202 for Rashod Bateman,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd need to check my values, but I'd probably need a top 7 pick. I think if you offered me the 108, I think I'd probably rather have Rashod Bateman right now.
Yeah, you see what I mean? And to be fair, like you're obviously really tuned in and, not every dynasty player is the same as you. So that's why you go and ask the questions, because there are people who are just like, yeah, whatever, sure, 201, take him. But for me, as the other side of it, I would be like, I'm definitely not giving you the 107 or the 106 for Rashod Bateman. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm just like, I see the risk side of it more than the reward side of it, I think, at this stage.
Yeah. And then your final guy, Evan, talk to me.
Wan'Dale Robinson. And I just did this one because, well, I mean, for quite a few reasons, but he's kind of one of those like bargain bucket sort of values. You know what I mean? Where he's one of the guys I love taking dart throws like this, because if it works out, it's such a massive ROI. And if it doesn't work out, it didn't really cost you that much anyways, because, you've got a little slide up there at the minute. He's going wide receiver 49 in DLF ADP, a late second round pick and keep trade cut. He actually, so it's really interesting. He's one of the guys, one of the things I try and do, one of the things I pride myself on is not having take lock and being willing to admit when I'm wrong. And when I wasn't overly high on him coming in. I was like, I think I had around a mid second round grade on him for rookie picks for last year in the rookie draft. So I was like, yeah, I like him. There's things I like about him, things I'm not sure about, but I was really impressed when he hit the league. I really like things, for example, he was picked by this regime. I talked about in depth about Daniel Jones and what a step forward he's made because of the solid coaching staff. I think Brian Daboll is a good coach. I think he's got a good coaching staff. I think the Giants are an ascending franchise at the moment. Whether that continues, we'll see. We'll have to see how their draft picks go and how their offseason goes and things like that. But I think they've picked Wan'Dale Robinson. They want him there. Yes, he had an injury, but that's why you're getting such a value on him. In the sort of, he got injured right at the start of the season, was out for a few weeks, came in, really only played sort of week 6 to 11. So it's quite a small sample size, but in that small sample size, he was commanding around a 20% target share, which is really, really, really solid, really nice for a rookie wide receiver. He has second round draft capital, which draft capital snobs will love. You know what I mean? Like guys who just put a lot of weight and a lot of value in draft capital. And let us not forget, he is only 1 year removed from being in college. In college, he had a 39.3% target share, which is 99th percentile. He also had a breakout age of 18.7, which is 95th percentile. I think there's a lot of things to really, really like about Wan'Dale Robinson. And again, for the cost of like a late second round pick, there's really very little risk and quite a lot of reward. I think he's somebody that, based on if you project forward and say, from my understanding, I was looking up recently, they think he could be ready to go week 1. Now, will he be ready full steam ahead? Probably not. But if he's ready to be out there and playing week 1, that's really positive. If you project forward a 18 to 20% target share with the offense, the way it was and things like that, I mean, he could be getting over 100 targets this year. So somebody who could get 100 targets in an ascending offense with what I really like about him, again, I don't want to go on too long, but he's really good at yards after catch. I think that's a massive part of the NFL these days. You look at guys like Deebo Samuel, you look at guys like AJ Brown, your yak monsters. He's really good at yards after catch. He played a running back at part of his career. He understands yards after catch, things like that. So somebody that really could be a solid like wide receiver 3 flex play for you that you can get for like a late second round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the target volume that you talked about was incredible. If you look at targets per route run, he was 21st last year. That's in the same category as DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin. That's ahead of Rashod Bateman, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore. Like when he was on the field, the Giants wanted to get him the ball. And as you said, he was the only wide receiver basically that this regime spent capital on. I know they brought in Isaiah Hodgins and people like that, but they went out and drafted him. My concern with Wan'Dale Robinson is that ADOT. You can see it on screen, 6.2 yards. That is low. Okay, he is going to have incredible volume in order to be seriously fantasy relevant. I think that hopefully he can be used a little bit more downfield, and we can see that ADOT creep up, and he can be, a good, competent fantasy receiver. But if that ADOT stays around, 6 yards, you saw with Debo this year, it's just so hard to be really good from a fantasy perspective when you're basically relying on incredible efficiency.
I do think as well, just to that point, if you look at all quarterbacks this year who had a minimum of 150 dropbacks, Daniel Jones was dead last in ADOT. His ADOT itself was 6.4. So Daniel Jones was, and that a lot of it, I think, is being in a new system, not having weapons, not having a lot of like established guys down the field and things like that. So I would expect, again, going back to the Jared Goff thing that I thought was really interesting, Jared Goff was near the very bottom in ADOT in 2021. He's jumped up to about sort of middle of the pack. So I think that's a progressive thing in the offense. I think if they get a receiver in the draft, or they sign somebody, or they trade for somebody, they have a better record next year, a second year in the system. I do expect that ADOT to go up. But yeah, I do understand and I get your point.
Yeah, no. Well, fingers crossed that he can improve that and really outproduce his current value. Well, that brings us to the end, Evan. Thank you ever so much for coming on. Before we finish, any final thoughts for the offseason? Give us a little snippet. Any rookie that you absolutely love right now?
Oh man, I've just been digging into the running backs so far, so I haven't got into the wide receivers or the tight ends or anything yet. So I think it's a really nice class. I don't think outside of Bijan, I don't know that there's any like game wrecker, like, oh my gosh, this guy's automatically a top 5 dynasty wide receiver or running back. But there's a couple of guys I think are really, really interesting. So I think it'll be a fun class. I think it'll be your second round picks, even your third round picks will have value this year. But at the same time, if people are going crazy, I do sort of feel like there's a lot of depth, but not a lot of elite talent, if that makes sense. So I feel like if you're expecting to load up and like be a contender because of your rookie draft picks this year, I don't know. I feel like it's a really good year if you're like middle of the pack and you have a good solid group of like second round picks and you can just get some bulk and some depth and really make a push. But if you've like tanked last year and you've got like 6 or 7 firsts and you're expecting to like go, gung ho and like just take the league by storm, I don't know if that's going to work out. Like